our last question is about the skills. So, which technical and soft skills have mattered most in your growth? And what's one piece of advice that you would give to women starting in GIS? This time, let's start with Tyler, please.
I think in terms of hard skills, it feels like an infinite number that are helpful in the geospatial world. Speaking of mentors, had a mentor tell me this, and at the time I was like, that can't be right. And I've sort of come to this conclusion myself over time, which is that yes, you need to have hard skills to be successful in the geospatial world. I always am trying to work on those, but at the end of the day, the tools themselves are kind of always changing. There's new coding languages, there's new packages in those coding languages. Even only like being in the early career stage, not being that far out of school, there's software that I learned in school, especially for like remote sensing, we just don't use anymore. And it's only been like 5-6 years since I learned that thing. Like things change really, really fast. For me, what's been most helpful, and again, my mentor said, and at the time I was like, but no, I have to master coding, I have to master this. No, I feel like learning how to learn, how to pick up the tools quickly is far more important than mastery beyond a certain level. And everybody has to find that balance of picking up new skills and mastering the ones you already have. You have to find that balance for yourself, given your field, your subfield, your niche, your applications. But I do think if you can learn how to learn quickly and also sort of think to yourself when you see a new tool, okay, like how might I use this for my research? What could this do for me? What could this do for the things I'm trying to build? You can sort of weed out the things to focus on, or not weed out, but prioritize what to focus on or not focus on as you learn those new things. So that's been really helpful for me. And, thinking about like when I was learning ArcGIS, I feel like at first I wanted to memorize, okay, you click on this button and you click on this button, but then, the software updates and now the buttons are in new places. So it's more important to think about, in ArcGIS, I think it's a good place to start learning GIS because you have like a physical toolbox. I remember, seeing the little toolbox icon, and that's still how I think about it, even when I'm in the geospatial ecosystem beyond ArcGIS, is I imagine a little toolbox in my brain and I think about like, okay, I have this problem that I'm trying to solve. What is sort of the palette of tools available to me? And I think of it conceptually as opposed to what am I going to click on? Because I can always Google what am I going to click on or what's the syntax for this code. So I would say that's kind of the mix of skills broadly that's been helpful. And then more specifically, I would say definitely getting more into coding has been helpful for me since I started with GIS. And then, I thought about, where does the data come from when it's not from a survey or people? So then I became interested in remote sensing. And then I thought about, what's the math behind that? So I took spatial statistics. And then, it was sort of this, I thought, what's a bigger data set? And I want to automate. Then I learned how to code, and it's sort of been like a very organic process for me. And I think because I didn't come from a computer science background to start, I think kind of balancing the software and the coding, on the hard skill side has been really helpful. I've found R to be more helpful in my work than Python, but you can't really go wrong. Either of those or probably other coding languages are all great.
Thank you so much. Let's hear from Lori.
Yes, in terms of hard skills, definitely having the ability to do some sort of coding, even if it's very minor coding, I think is incredibly beneficial. A lot of the students that we see that come into our graduate programs in particular don't have a strong background in either like statistical type math or programming. If you've got either one of those components, you can pretty easily build out the other. I tell my students, you just, again, echoing what Tyler was saying, you never stop learning. When I started teaching, I was teaching ArcMap, and that one by the wayside. Then it was ArcGIS Pro and QGIS. It's all the plugins that you can have with QGIS as well. And there's an infinite amount of stuff. You're never going to know it all. And that's okay. Make sure that, again, you're keeping a really open mind and you're staying curious about what all is out there, because it is rapid fire change. If you know some kind of core skill set, combine those with some soft skills, like, again, being comfortable with the uncomfortableness of putting yourself out there and talking to people and asking questions. All of those things, it keeps coming back around to that. Having those interpersonal skills, those really good communication skills, both orally and in terms of writing, and I know in the age of AI, people don't sit down and formally write everything out like they used to, and that you can consult AI to, help polish things up. But just having those core sets of skills can really take you a lot of places. So again, just making sure that you're staying curious. And Esri, I point my students constantly to Esri's academy. The amount of things that are in the academy is unreal. And you could literally spend, well, in fact, with our 3D GIS course, we're employing a lot of the tutorials from Esri's academy. And my hope is that students will continue going back to that academy to be able to, add on to their skill sets along the way.
Thank you so much, Lori, for that. And let's go to Phyllis for her thoughts about this.
Yeah, I cannot agree more on the importance of learning new things and being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because to be honest, I work for Esri. A lot of my friends on the other teams, we have no ideas what the other team does, right? Like, and a lot of my one of my best friends here at Esri, they come from a very computer science background. So even though they are also product engineers, they work on the runtime SDKs. So during lunch, we will be talking very different things. And when we go to a developer summit, we are all product engineers from Esri, but then we will go to one session and we had no idea how this tool works because there are just so many tools out there. I mean, beyond the Esri ArcGIS ecosystem, and you cannot name more. But when I looked at this story, I actually thought about, when I look at this question, I actually thought about a story happened to me at my previous role in Boston. And Laurie mentioned about AI, but at the AI startup, our final deliverable was geodatabases, but with a lot of AI identified utility works. So for example, we used the drone images to capture manholes or handholds on the ground. And our client at the time was a very conventional AEC company. And we actually worked with counties here in California to help underdeveloped counties to win permits to develop broadbands just for Wi-Fi or other wires. So our clients were coming from a very traditional surveying background. We're talking about a 50, 60-year-old men who like stepped in boots on the ground and they verified every utility feature by hands and they used a notebook instead of a field map app. So I remember when I looked at this question, I remembered the experience I had with them sitting in a meeting room, how much pushback we got from them about this AI adoption workflow and how many reservations they have about our AI work. And even though our AI work was not perfect at the time, but the turnaround time was like 50% more efficient. So I was a 23 years old, fresh out of college, sitting in that room, and I remember that uncomfortable feeling. But during that time, I like planted a seed, like basically in my heart, like this is the way moving forward. There is no way we're going back wearing boots on the ground, right? This the future is about AI and using a field maps app to collect utility data and work on these permits way faster. So my point is nowadays in 2026, every tech company is talking about AI agents. Esri is developing Geo AI assistants, AI agents across all teams. So I think the barrier to entry into this AI world is definitely getting lower, just from my experience back in 2023. So I think this is very exciting because now more people, younger folks can experiment and build these tools. So I would say the non-technical skill I have is to have strong opinions about moving forward and being innovative. But I think the technical world is try to be a little bit more AI native in an environment like this today because the bar is so much lower. There are so many things you can do. A lot of my friends are really into vibe coding, and it's really hard to not mention like AI in a meeting or event like this. But seriously, try to like play with it, develop a tool, a project through that, and I think that would be really beneficial for everyone in a world like this today.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shirin, and thank you to our amazing three panelists for sharing experiences. I think Yeah, like Shirin said, one of the things we hear over and over again is not just a hard skill, but also the ability to keep learning new things and being open-minded and moving forward and being innovative. So that's great to hear.